So thank you, sir. So does that mean that if a company say want to reach out to you because there is a complaint which has come to the internal committee in any of the companies, and they realize that it's something related to cyberspace, some harassment which is happening in the cyberspace. So can the internal committee also reach out to this the central portal on cybercrime, National Cyber Crime Portal? So is that possible?
That is very fine question, and the I would say the answer is an yes. This is a National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, www.cybercrime.gov.in. You, as soon as you go into this portal, you can report and track. If you are giving your address, you can track your complaint also, what has happened to your complaint. If you are reporting as anonymous, then obviously we don't know your address. We cannot give you the messages that what happened to your complaint. Anybody can become complainant. You have to choose the state. That is the point. You have to choose the state where you want to lodge this complaint, and that is how this portal will, will bundle it together and send it to Bihar. You may choose it if the place of occurrence is say in Bangalore. You can choose the place to be state to be in Karnataka. It will go to Karnataka portal, and the officer in charge who is looking after the nodal officer will distribute it to the concerned district. That is what is happening in Bihar, and we have received around 494 to be precise regarding the this portal in the 6 month.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, Aparna, I wanted to ask if there is any consequence of work from home on the POSH Act today. So, are we going to see any changes due to the current scenario, or you feel that whatever is happening right now is all covered under the Act? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, I'll take a few minutes to answer this. Okay,
Sure.
I'll just answer it in greater detail. With respect to your question about has things changed because people are working from home, certain things have definitely changed. For example, understanding of people that they can actually complain even if they're at home. That is something, as you had pointed out earlier, that needs to be we have to do more advocacy in it. Saying that whether you're working from home or you're working from any other space, it is while you're working, it is still your work. That is one of the aspects. The second thing that has also that according to me has changed. Although I honestly I must tell you I have not had any cases which have come to me because it's special about work from home. But I'm just talking to you in with my experience of doing remote cases. One of the things is as you had pointed out, this complete breaking of it's kind of blurring of lines between responsibilities and the demands that you can make from a co-worker in this kind of very amorphous work area. It's not as if work from home is not something that is alien to all of us. Quite a few of us, and some especially people in the technology sector, have always had this opportunity to work from home. Many of them have worked from home. Unfortunately, the discipline which is required of work from home, both for the employer and the employee, that is something that is not really clearly laid out, and they'll be bound to be some issues. So these are some of the concerns that we have to deal with as we go. As far as the act is concerned, the act doesn't distinguish between a work from home, work from a private space, work from a third party, from a client side, work from your own office. It doesn't distinguish. It only talks about sexual harassment in workplace, and workplace is anything in connection with work. For example, let's say transportation. If you remember, let's assume, let's look at the pre-COVID situations earlier. At that time, if people were in transport, for example, transport is not really work. But if you get harassed from a co-worker or during the course of the transport, that was covered under the act. So we have to actually adapt the same policies here. I must also take this opportunity as a slight digression to point to Mr. Gangwar. Mr. Gangwar, I'm so grateful that you brought out the example of the cybercrime portal of the Government of India. You may not know, but I would like to share with you that I'm arguing that case in Supreme Court. It's after constant, I'll use a kind of a informal word, nagging of through the court, that we were able to get this portal set up. And I'm really grateful. The MHA, of course, initially there were a lot of teething issues. We took about 3 years for them to agree that there need to be a portal. But now having established it, they've taken ownership and responsibility to do it. And the fact that Mr. Gangwar is today talking about it actually indicates that the MHA has completely taken ownership of it. It's an ongoing case. It was actually related to rape and gang rape videos and child pornography because it was coming to social media. And that's how it started. But over a period of time, they've included other aspects, and it's very relevant today, especially considering the fact that now we are in a virtual space, and we don't know how long we will be in a virtual space. And I can also see more and more employers are preferring this area because it really reduces their costs to a significant extent. So I think a lot of people will now say that 50% of their staff will work from home. I mean, they may resort to that. So this whole cybercrime portal becomes very even more relevant because you know what we say. There was a saying that a traveler has no shame. You know, then there was that kind of a cliche thing. But now what I've seen is online it's even worse because the anonymity that you can enjoy because of the way in which you can create an identity online, which can be which you can reach out to only after a thorough technical investigation, which makes a person even more bolder, you know, much more bolder to reach out. And these are new challenges. And whether the act is ready to deal with us or not, time will tell. But I think, given the fact that it has a very expansive definition of what a workplace is, we should be able to deal with it. What is required, in my opinion, is that for us to reach out to all employers to understand and appreciate and respect the parameters for working from home. And how do you respect that if I'm working from home and I'm getting class at my home? It's still something that you need to acknowledge because it happened during the course of my work. And that is something, and that's a kind of a learning that one has to come. And I think that can happen only through advocacy. And I'm hoping Jayaprada, organizations like you will work on that. And of course, ma'am, Mrs. Sharma is here. She's a doyen of this women's rights, and a lot of hope one has from Women's Commission. And the Women's Commission has played such an important role in this. And I think both like Women's Commission and people like you, organizations like you, will have to undertake a very aggressive advocacy to educate people that even if you're working from home, it's still your workplace. So so do not tolerate abuse. I mean, not to say that tolerate abuse elsewhere. Don't tolerate abuse I would say don't tolerate abuse at any space. And definitely you should be able to register complaints even if you're working from home. I hope I answered your question.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aparna. And I can't agree more on Rekha Sharma ma'am because I have been going through her tweets regularly every day. So yes, whatever you said about her is absolutely true. And yes, thank you so much. Yes, we are doing a lot of work on the awareness and advocacy, and that's extremely critical today in organizations. So having said that, there is a lot of challenge even in the implementation of the present provisions of the Act, Aparna. So I just wanted to know, we would, of course, amongst the other challenges, there are three most important challenges which I thought I will put forward. One is the registering and receiving complaints. Next is the conducting of inquiry proceedings, and of course, regulatory compliance. Now, coming to the registering and receiving complaints, because of the current situation, do you see any challenge in the implementation part of that? Like, say, for example, especially in places where people are technologically challenged, right? So can technology challenge be taken as a reason for not fulfilling any of the obligations of the provisions? So if you could just throw some light on that. Yeah, Aparna?
Can I?
Aparna, can you come on line? I think Aparna is a little stuck on the thing. Aparna, your frame has frozen. So.
Yeah, there is some issue. Can I answer, Jayaprada?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the question you have asked about the registration is very valid because of in this COVID times and especially in the area which are not well connected through internet, especially the hinterland of the Bihar or the other parts of the country, or the segment of the population which don't own or don't have the means to have a laptop or internet connectivity to go online and complain is enormous. It is still in the country, it is a challenge. For this, I think one option would be, because Aparna ji has been continuously advocating for all this in the Supreme Court. Rekha ma'am is also there, and she would also would like to see enter into this aspect, is to create a very user-friendly, simple mobile-based technology in which a lady or a woman who is under stress or under duress, she wants to complain, she can just put in some SOS kind of a complaint, and later on the officers or the police officers or the concerned officers can contact her. She may not be able to contact some SOS kind of helpline kind of a thing, can also be thought of, which should be pan-India basis, because many state governments like Delhi Police has created some helpline, Haryana Police or even Bangalore Police, Bombay Police. These are city-specific initiatives of the police department. We need a pan-India kind of initiative or a helpline or SOS kind of a emergency button, panic button, which we call, or something like that, on the lines of the portals which we have created. It would be very easy to use, and I think it will be helpful for all the women, especially when they are traveling, when they are outside their jurisdiction, especially in the night. So this pan-India kind of a mobile-based solution would be thought of. Otherwise, this internet-based, this website portal is already there, as I explained. That
Sure.
is what my immediate thoughts are. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. I think wonderful thoughts. So, Aparna, yeah, so to go back to you, what I was asking is that in the implementation of the current provision, do you see any challenges in receiving and registering complaints from women?
Okay, I'll answer it two ways. One is with respect to women who are otherwise technologically challenged or do not have access to internet, as you were pointing out. That is one category of people. As far as they are concerned, the challenges remain because they are not familiar with using internet, email, and how to make complaints. Those challenges will remain as far as they're concerned, and that there is a way in which we can address it. With respect to others who can access technology, I don't think it's a challenge at all. For example, I know I've been dealing with cases where people have been all over the world, and we have been dealing with those complaints. We've been dealing with virtually. Of course, COVID has made it mandatory for all of us to deal with all kinds of complaints virtually. But we have been dealing with cases virtually for a very long time now. We have been deposing witnesses virtually for a very long time now, because especially when you have witnesses in different jurisdictions, even within the country, it is something that one has been doing it. But to go back to people who could not access technology, or technology fails, like what happened just now, even with the best internet connection, these things can happen. In such situations, see what does the act say? The act only says that the person has to report someplace. So it's important that the space in which we can report, whether it is the employer's ICC, depending on the employer, if it's a large employer, or the local committee, where you have the local committee, and under the act, they have to be available for people. And so it's important they are available. There's information available about them. For example, if you ask me, in the place where I stay, if there's a local committee, and if the local committee is there, where are they located? One doesn't know. Can we access them through phone? One doesn't know about that. Is their phone numbers publicized? One doesn't know about that. It's important to get those things initiated in a more aggressive way, so people can complain. And I just want to say something about what Sir said, because I was able to hear whatever was discussed. I think you could not hear me. Is that the cybercrime portal is for a very different purpose. But in the sexual harassment workplace, if you want to deal with those cases, then you need to have an employer-employee relationship. There, the cybercrime portal can't do. The cybercrime portal is to, if you want to initiate a criminal proceedings, if you want to take an action under the IPC, then of course it becomes 24. But if you want to look at the POSH Act and the internal complaints mechanism and to deal with it, then of course we'll have to go back to our employer. In the absence of an employer, a local committee, and however we will deal with. For that purpose, we need to activate these things. The other question that I asked is about how does a person validate a complaint, and this is something that constantly happens. For example, email can be from anybody else. I can make an email in ID in your name and send an email ID as if you're complaining. These are challenges. So one thing that we have been, I had in committees that I have been where we are using virtually, this is what we have been doing. even if it's an email complaint, we actually have a physical interview with the person, but in the sense, physical interviewing, face-to-face interview using a like this, Zoom and other. I mean, this Microsoft team have come in now, but Skype was always there. These technologies was available, and then we asked the complainant to authenticate that she actually said it. Even if, because the act doesn't say that we need to have a complaint version based physically filed attestation required, like how is a court required. There's no such requirement under the act. The act only was the complainant gives her version of the complaint, which anyway has to be subsequently authenticated. Because, for example, even in a written complaint, if I were to dummy write the complaint to somebody else and say it is her complaint, we would still ask for an authentication. So I don't think the complaint process itself, there is much of a change, it will be affected as the act is concerned. It's just that we need to activate all avenues in a more aggressive manner. That's what I have.
Sure. Thank you so much. So Rekha ma'am, so now if you look at, women who are actually not able to, complain to their workplaces because of, working from home and them not knowing that home is a workplace, they may start using alternate mechanisms like local complaints committee and NCW. We know for sure that NCW has a good online presence and they very they react immediately. What about the local complaints committee which are situated around? So do you think they are well equipped to handle cases online, especially in today's scenario?
Jaya, first of all, when you were talking, I think you were talking about two things, cybercrime and sexual harassment at workplace. Right. When I talked to you earlier, I told you the number of complaints received about sexual harassment at workplace. Whereas they have increased or decreased, the cybercrime cases have increased in NCW also. Okay. As Mr. Gangwar is saying, the number of complaints have increased with them. Same is with us. They are now threefold. I think these 3 months, these complaints are threefold with us. Okay. Now the second question which you have asked about the local complaint committees, and you are rightly saying that they are not equipped to take these complaints online, and their system is as such that I don't think these committees, the local complaint committees, are conducting inquiries online or taking complaints by email. But now we are writing to all the districts that they must now work online because women are not being able to reach them. Especially at this time, they can also take complaints on WhatsApp. Now every government agency is saying that they can register their complaints even in major fields, even in the courts, they are summoning by WhatsApp. So even with us, we have initiated one number where women can reach us on WhatsApp, and it is easily available throughout India. They have their smartphone these days. So we are writing to these local complaint committees, which are coming under district collector or district magistrate, that they should work on WhatsApp number where women can reach them, and they also can. But then again, I will say unorganized women who are working in unorganized sector, whether in construction sites or other sites, they don't even have access to internet. No, how will they reach? So in fact, they don't even know that there is some kind of local complaint committee. So first thing is we have to make these women aware for whom we have made this facility of local complaint committees. They don't know, and we are making them aware by legal awareness campaigns. Still, NCW is not an organization which can reach to the every nook and corner. Organizations like you and other NGOs who are really working on ground, we are working with them, and in fact we are financing many of the agencies, and this time we are working with National Legal Service Authority and District Legal Service Authority to conduct these legal awareness programs throughout India. In every district, minimum 2 programs will be there, where we will be telling women what is the law, what is ICC, how can they reach to local complaint committees, who are taking their complaints, and what is sexual harassment at workplace. They don't even know that. So first we have to tell them there is a such thing and there is a law which is working for that. So NCW is making aware of them, and we in fact last 2 months we also had an advertisement we were giving to Doordarshan about the sexual harassment and workplace advertisements. And when this Ramayana and the Mahabharata they were giving, we were giving our advertisement during those shows so that it can reach to the people who really need to know that what is the law. So
Right.
we in our capacity we are working, but still I think that work is too less to reach to the women who really need to know what is the law.
Right. So, like if you see the, if you look at Bangalore, ma'am, today, I think, I mean, before the COVID situation, I would say that there were a lot of startups working in co-working spaces with less than 10 employees. And for them, the jurisdiction is the local complaints committee. And apparently none of them knew who the local complaints committee were. So is there some provision where the companies which are less than 10, which are of course tech enabled, they're all startups in the technology, on that, related to technology, and of course other small businesses, but they have absolutely no idea of who is the local complaints committee whom they need to reach out to. So is there any provision, or is there anywhere where we can get these, or who is the authority who actually monitors and implements these things so that we can go and take details from them, ma'am?
As I told you, district magistrate is the authority
Okay.
who makes the local complaint committee.
Okay.
And these agencies actually, big organization also don't know what is internal complaint committee. So
Right.
I have gone to many big organizations where they were saying नहीं हमारे पास नहीं है, होता क्या है पहले, ma'am you just tell us what is this. So yes, you're right that small companies don't know about it. Firstly, they have to be aware of it, and then they have to make aware of their employees. Yes, they have less than 10 employees and they can't make local complaint committee, but then they can make them aware that if you have such problem, you can reach to local complaint committee, which comes under DM, and DM nominate few NGO people. They have 5 people in that local complaint committees, and mostly women, reputed women who are working in the social field and working in some NGOs. But then these are many complaint committees are defunct. From last 2.5 years, I've been writing to every chief secretary to send us the details of the local complaint committees so that we can put on our website and people should know where to reach with the phone numbers. But I'm sorry to say, very few people have come back to us with the details. They just say that yes, we have number of complaint committees, but they never send us the details. So whether they have or not, I'm not sure of that.
Okay, fine. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the information. So Aparna, coming to the conducting of inquiries, right? So we have seen that, of course, most of them will agree that when we do whenever there's a physical presence of the parties while conducting inquiries, the communication levels and communications are much better. Like say, for example, when you talk about a compassionate listening, with respect to parties, I think our body language speaks a lot when it comes to compassionate listening. It can be seen, it can be felt. And similarly, body languages can be, a great source of information itself while conducting the inquiries. So in such a thing, do you feel that online, of course, you said you've been doing a lot of online inquiries. So do you think, can we do justice to the, in online inquiry? Do you advocate doing the complete investigation online, or what are your thoughts on that?
You see, nothing can replace a physical physically being close to each other. That kind, actually non-virtual, if I can use that word, kind of a space where you can have an inquiry. Nothing can replace that. But having said that, given the circumstances, we'll have to use technology to the best way possible and to our advantage and to the advantage of women as much as possible. these limitations are there. For example, not only about body language. Sometimes the technology itself may fail us, and it is I mean, at least in the last 4 months, I have been doing everything online, and sometimes the technology does fail us for various reasons. We are not able to communicate in a way that one thought to, and many people are not very comfortable using technology yet. We have not completely graduated to a virtual world. Some of us are very comfortable. Some of us are not comfortable using technology, and to be comfortable and to also kind of fearlessly make a statement. For example, there's a lot of other issues which does come in the way. When a complainant it has a lot of takes courage and then comes and files a complaint, she actually confides it to a complaints member, and she says, "Okay, I'm going to tell you and nobody else." And I think it's confidential. In a virtual space, it gets people completely continue to have that trust. To actually feel that, okay, there's nobody else in that space who's actually participating in this. And especially in a case where it's against a senior person of an organization, for her to think that, okay, the senior person is not influencing this whole proceedings in any way, these are challenges that the complainant will face. And similarly, respond depending on the situation. And as far as the complaint committee, the committee members is concerned, these challenges will be there to see whether is somebody prompting her or not. Is what she's saying really herself or somebody else is saying, and likewise, these challenges will be there. But I think we'll have to gradually acknowledge and understand and appreciate the advantage of technology and use it. And I think with experience we'll overcome these challenges, because body language is something no law can define, no regulation can define. That can only come with experience. And the case of sexual harassment is very rarely it happens in the open for everyone to see. So you will really not have any direct witnesses. So given these challenges, it has to be about how the complainant is deposing, how consistent is she, how tenacious has she really followed up, and these are the ways in which we determine the genuineness of a complaint, and also what happened. She determines there are various parameters in which we discuss. We decide whether the complaint is genuine or not, and then of course give recommend a redressal for the complainant. So I would say there are challenges, but it is not nothing. It's not anything that we can overcome. It's a learning process for all of us, and we need to continue to use this process and see how it actually works out. And I don't have any anecdotal example as well. So research is something else, or even anecdotal. I don't have. Where people have actually said that because of technology, the complaint has. We don't have that yet. Because I'm able to gather that kind of documentation or some kind of a data, it's a little too early for us to judge this process.
Okay. Thank you, Aparna. I think that was a breather for everyone, because most of them were worried about these online, investigations. Yeah, so there have been couple of issues which people are raising, saying that, like, for example, legal representation right now is not allowed, with the parties during investigations. But during the online investigation, they have seen the victims and sometimes the alleged harassers getting legal representation sitting right next to them, and making use of them. So all these are happening. So is it something that we're going to learn as we go by, or is there any other way out, Aparna?
You see, I'll tell you something. This is for me, this is a non-issue, because even if you do not allow physical legal representation in the whole process, remotely a lawyer may be advising, because now you have phones. People can consent. I know. I'll give an example. A slight digression. I'll give an example. 2 years back, one of my friends was conducting a family dispute. She was representing the wife, and there was a husband also who was also there. The husband never come to court, but he had instructed his lawyer to keep his mobile phone on during the hearings, so that a husband could hear everything that was happening in court. So people had made these many inquiries where when the people, when both complainant and the respondent phone on, they're constantly getting messages, and you can make it silent. And there are so many ways in which you can transmit. Even if you tell them that phones are not allowed, people still find a way to use these. So peers of supporting is happening even today. naive on us to assume that people are getting legal advice. When a person's whole professional career is at stake, ensure that they get the best representation possible and they will seek that advice. And my I think I have not a lawyer. I'm dealing with a case which we just closed actually, of this case where a woman was complaining. But the beginning to the end of the complaint, it was not her husband who was egging her to complain. Constantly he was pushing, saying that you say this, you say this. Everybody wanted to sit with her, saying that no, she's very she's comfortable, she's fragile. But at the point we found that it is not her complaint at all. It was actually he was pushing it. So it's just lawyer. It can still be non-lawyer, but somebody else pushing the complaint. Challenges will be there. It's to make assessment about how to understand what the complainant is saying. They can take it because of which you can prove sexual harassment. So these are some of the things that the committee will have to evolve a bit. So these challenges are something that the committee will be able to overcome, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Aparna. So,
hello,
yeah.
Hello, Jack.
Yes, sir.
Can I come in between just to supplement what Aparna ji has just said?
Absolutely, sir. Please go ahead.
Your question was very pertinent that during online inquiries and during this COVID times, it is possible that many inquiries are online. The legal representation may come in, although it is not allowed as per the law. It is very much possible. And as Aparna ji has said rightly, that even otherwise also, the person may be getting the legal advice from the friends, from some lawyer or some way otherwise also. Two things are very important. One is how quickly the inquiry is done. See, over passage of time, not only memory fades away, many other things fades away, and things are fallen into a place. The person who has made the complaint may not be willing that much, may not give that much evidence later on. So my first point would be that whosoever is working under this committee and whosoever is the monitoring this committee, there should be a regulatory mechanism that the inquiry has to be completed within a particular time and as soon as possible. That should be made mandatory. That should be made mandatory to all the heads of the organizations, that they should see that post meeting is completed, inquiry is completed well within the time. That is part one. Part two, most of the time in Bihar or in other places I am in touch with, in UP and Delhi also, because the unavailability of the NGO or the one lady representation from the civil society, the meetings are delayed. So that is another problem, because normally what happens is that one NGO is nominated to so many different committees. So they are busy in some meeting, otherwise they are busy in somewhere, otherwise. So that is the another challenge we face. Now I'll tell you one interesting anecdotal story which happened in my organization, and it was with the cyber cell. So you can understand that the person who made the complaint was working in the cyber cell. The person against whom the complaint was made was working in the cyber cell. And the complaint was that he is making obscene chatting with me. So that was the complaint. So we formed a committee, we inquired into that. So we asked the complainant, where is your mobile phone, what was the chatting? So the chatting was made available and the committee saw it and they found it is inappropriate. Now, from the accused side, or the person who was accused of it, he said, sir, there is a defense of me. What is the defense? He said two things. One, please look into all the chats this complainant or this lady has been doing with the other male colleagues in the same cyber cell, because she is the habit of making such chatting with the other male colleagues also. You have to look into her conduct and character also. That was the first point he made. And the other point he made, even if my comment was inappropriate to her, why she did not block me immediately from the chat? And till the inquiry was being held, it was around 3 weeks gap, and we found that she did not block it. So then the committee asked the lady that if you found it inappropriate, why didn't you block him immediately? So what I'm saying is that such and such technological challenges will always come into the inquiry. It is a different matter altogether that committee took a very strict and the hard view. We went by the gut feeling of the lady officer, and we said no. Once she has said that it is inappropriate, you have to accept that it was inappropriate, and the matter was treated like that. But what I'm saying is that even in the online, people will come up with the different kind of defenses, that see her chat 1 year before, see her chat with other colleagues. So that does not make you as the party to chat with her. That is the logic. So we took that way, but I'm just saying that people can come with such defenses even in such inquiries also, even
Right.
without legal representation. Even without legal representation allowed, they can come with such logic and such defenses.
Right. I understand, sir. So I have
Jaya,
another question.
sorry to interrupt, Jaya. There's Rajesh here. I think Madam Rekha Sharma has to leave. I think she has this message. Could you
Okay.
just check with her?
Okay.
If there are
So
any other questions for her, maybe we can complete that first.
yeah. So, ma'am, I wanted to ask from your perspective. So, can we see any amendments in the POSH Act in the near future, taking into consideration all the challenges that people are facing around? Do you see anything specifically changing in the next couple of months or a year, probably? Any inputs on that?
Even before COVID happened, pandemic happened, we had consultation on POSH before this also, all over India, and there were many suggestions which came, and we also found that this is not enough. The act has to need some changes. When I handle the cases myself, I also find few things which need to be changed, and that's why we started having consultation with law experts. There were many ex-judges also in that consultation, and especially when I see the complaint against a senior person coming up from the organization, the POSH committee is always under that senior person working, and that committee is made by that senior person. Generally, they don't work on the complaint properly. They don't listen to the complainant, and even the witnesses. Firstly, there are hardly any witness in such cases many a times. But even if the witnesses are there, they don't come up in. They are afraid of that senior person, and that they are afraid that their job will go. And we need to have more people from outside. There is uh, according to the act, only one NGO person has to represent in that committee. But we got these suggestions that there has to be more than one person in that committee. Secondly, the time period is only 3 years. Within 3 years, you have to complain in this.
3 months.
That is when three. No,
3
no,
months.
no. 3 months you have to complete.
Yes.
You have to complete within 3 months, but within 3 years you have to complain.
No, ma'am.
You
3
can
months to complain.
3 months for 3 months. Yeah, sorry. So yeah. So we are giving suggestion that within 6 months, minimum it should be 6 months, because sometimes complainants don't even come into terms like ये मेरे साथ हुआ क्या, या सच में ऐसा हुआ. They are mostly in doubt, like they are doubting themselves whether what I am feeling is right, and then they have to consult their family. Sometimes family says no, don't take it up, and I think 3 months is a very short period. And again, the committee has to give this within 3 months, which we see that it is not enough, and they don't even come up within 3 months. Most of the complaints which come to us are like they have not been working within the stipulated time. So there also we need some changes. There are many such changes. I can't remember everything, but we are working, and we have already given suggestions to the WCD and Law Ministry. We hope that changes. And now when people are working from home, I think it is already in the act that wherever you are working, whether it is home or in a restaurant, if you are working in a tech, even when you are commuting from your place to the office, that is also workplace. So I don't think there we need any change, but we need to tell people and make them understand that working from home is also working from it can be sexual harassment at workplace. And the work home is also workplace. We need to tell that. And also we need to, there has to be do's and don'ts from in the companies also, like dress code, how you should conduct yourself in a meeting. Timings is a big problem. Like you can't call a lady after a certain period, and if she is in the bedroom and she's taking a call from there, it is little awkward. And you can't call from a bedroom and sitting in your night dress, or in your shorts. A man can't call online to a lady. So all these do's and don'ts now, I think companies need to clarify to their employees, and we need to implement on those do's and don'ts. Even the language. We sometimes feel very comfortable sitting at home and talking to a person, and we just say yaar ye kar, yaar ye kar de. And when you are talking from your office, like for your office work, you can't use certain kind of words. They are not ethically okay, I think. And here we have to follow these things, and then I think those, otherwise act as, I think act is suffice, and it covers everything.
Jaya, you need to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, Rekha Sharma, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Jaya, and I'm leaving for another meeting. Thank you
Sure.
for making me part of it. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Bye
ma'am.
bye.
So we will continue the session, but thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah. Gangwar sir, I had another doubt. So confidentiality is a big, is extremely important during conducting investigations. But today what is happening is we are hearing a lot of concerns from companies, especially when everything is being done online, right? So like say, for example, the committee proceedings, everything, if it's going to be online, so people are asking, like, what if the parties involved, it could be anyone, not necessarily a victim or an alleged harasser, but also anyone from the IC itself. So any parties involved in conducting investigations, there are chances that people can do the recordings or take the screenshots or share it on the social media, just to kind of play around with the brand image of company, or for that matter for people, or to even degrade their ICs for that matter, right? So these are all big risks as far as confidentiality is concerned. So any word of caution or advice from your end on that front, on how do we avoid such risk? Because they can go on social media and spoil, people's images and, everything. So any word of caution or anything that you have to say on that front?
You have asked a very, very difficult question. It's a very, very difficult question. In the age of mobile phones in our hands, nothing remains the secret. In the very, very confidential high-level meetings, I have seen that mobile phones are deposited outside so that you don't carry anything with you. And then we have different bug devices, and whole spying business of world over is about eavesdropping. What is happening in a meeting? Suppose a confidential meeting is happening at the Government of India level, some policy decision is being taken, what will happen, and things like that. Important police meetings, army meetings, financial meetings, and things like that. Eavesdropping is a big challenge for all of us, and mobile phone is a big threat in maintaining the confidentiality. That is part one. So if you are conducting your session online, like for example, this particular meeting, web meeting we are doing on Teams, and now it can be recorded. Whatever I'm speaking can be recorded, whatever the whole session can be recorded, and then it can be played, replayed, number of copies, it can be sent to different organizations simultaneously. While it is being recorded, it can be sent. So that remains a big challenge. I don't see any technological answer for that.
Okay.
The only way could be that, think from this point of view, why an employee would like to tarnish the image of an organization in which he is working. That means there are some dissatisfaction in the employee. That means there is some element is there which is prompting him to go online and threatening the image of its own organization where he is working. Obviously, the two people are working in the same organization. Maybe the victim is not satisfied with the proceeding. She may take a snapshot, or she may take a video recording and go on public online. See, nothing was heard of me. 3 months have gone. No inquiry. I'm mentally harassed for 3 months. My mental peace is gone. Maybe somewhere. So I think from management point of view, we have to look from that point of view. Any threat to security and safety of an organization comes from employees first. It is the employee who can be a big source of confidentially threat to an organization. A dissatisfied employee, because then he is somebody within the organization. Somebody dissatisfied within the organization is the more threat. Is a more threat. Is a bigger threat than somebody outside trying to poach into your environment and getting into that. Technologically, it would be very difficult to stop somebody from recording the session, because all the facilities are made to record, to take a snapshot and things like that. The other could be that sensitive statements or the sensitive things can be done offline or in person, whereas the notice sending or the meeting will be held on that day, please come on that time, that is the when. All those things can be online. You can send messages, you can send notices, okay, this meeting will be held at this time. But while the meeting is being held, I think it would be proper if it is held offline, in person. That will take care of your earlier question also, when you said compassionate listening and the direct observance of the behavior, the body language and other things of the both the parties. So that is, I think, the best option.
Sure. Thank you, sir. So, Aparna, any experiences you've had, that you would want to share in terms of confidentiality being lost or something like that?
As sir pointed out rightly, it is the person who's unhappy with the whole process who's going to break confidentiality. That is something one has to be aware of. But there are consequences of this, because it's not so much. It cannot even be the case of complainant or the respondent, but witnesses confidentiality, because many people come and depose before the committee only because they feel confidentiality. And in a virtual setup, when they know that the person is somebody,
switch off this thing.
When they know anybody can watch it, so there is some nervousness or discomfort in about deposing, and all these concerns will be there. One of the ways in which one can think about doing it is because that's how courts depose. For example, we have video conferencing the deposition of even criminal cases, like when come and depose. What they actually do in those in those times is that there is a third person appointed by the court. It's normally an executive. It's like it can be a police, it can be a court officer, somebody who's also present in that place, who's ensuring the sanctity of the whole proceedings. So there are ways in which one can do that. You can look at having another colleague, another employee of the employer, to remain present in those places where the person is deposed from, if it's feasible, and then can ensure the sanctity is maintained. There are ways in which one can do, and it has to be a case-to-case basis. But making sure confidentiality is maintained is very, very important. And employer has to take responsibility to ensure that it is kept. And we take steps to do this.
Okay, thank you. So now, most important part, sir, I wanted to know if you can share some do's and don'ts in terms of people, who are working from home. So from the cybersecurity perspective, if you can share some information on that, do's and don'ts, and what people should do, what people should not do while they're working from home, it'll be of great use to our audience today.
Okay, I'll try to be brief and try to be as short as possible.
Sure.
There are certain tips which an individual should take, and then there are certain tips which an organization should take. Okay. So the first thing is that we all have come on a platform called internet. It's a new cyber world we have all entered, willingly or unwillingly. There is no choice for all of us. But unfortunately, the regulatory part of this cyber world is very, very weak till now. Maybe the whole cyber world, the concept of internet is based on democracy, freedom, interconnectedness, globalization. Everything is because of that. Think of a situation in which we need a driving license to drive my car on a highway. We need a gun license to hold a gun. We need so many licenses to do so many things in the physical world. But on the internet highway, on a cyber super highway, I can create an account. I can go multiple times. I can visit number of websites. I can download. I can upload. There is no permission is needed. No license is needed. Nothing is needed. For driving my first two-wheeler, I need to have a particular age, and then there is a test and things like that. So internet is a very, very risky superhighway that we all should be aware of it. As the parents, as the guardians in the family, as the elders in the family, we should be aware, and we should always make our children aware of this particular concept that, okay, it's a connected world. You get so lot of opportunities in the internet world, but the threats in the internet are also interconnected. Threat may come from unknown sources. Somebody may morph a picture, create a fake picture of somebody, and then crime can be committed. Today, I'm just narrating one incident of today. What happened in Delhi? One woman and her daughter are murdered. It's a physical crime, murdered and buried in the house. Why? Because that lady made an marriage with a person who changed his religion, made a false claim to herself, created a false fake profile in Meerut in UP. And this man belonged to Bihar, and he's finally caught now. So he created a false profile, he changed his whole religion, befriended this lady, married him, had a child, and after so many years, when the lady comes out, no, he is not of this religion, he's of another religion. And then this man has killed both of them just to take revenge. That how could you dare to reveal my real identity? Things are happening that. So the few suggestions which I think are more appropriate would be that whenever we are on internet, things can come from unknown sources because it's interconnected world. It may come from anywhere. So we have to be very, very cautious. The first point would be that don't believe anything on the face of it. If a mail is coming from sbi.com, I have to be doubly sure that it is actual sbi.com which is sending me the mail, not a fraudster who is created a fake address and asking for my credentials. So that is first thing. Never believe what is happening on the internet on the face of it. You have to check it, because false identities can be created digitally. The pictures can be morphed, the addresses can be changed, and things like that. I mean, I need not go into detail. The second part is don't download any email from unknown sources, especially the attachments, because the attachments of the mail come with a pre-coded software known as the malware. And as soon as you open the attachment, the language may be that your health is okay. Do you want to take a test of health? Your COVID times? Just click this attachment. Now, what will happen? By clicking the attachment, a malware will be installed on your system, and henceforth, all your secret things which are happening on your laptop can be conveyed to criminals outside. So that is the second part. Third part is the unsecure home network. Now, this is a big challenge when the companies are work from home. In the companies, we have a secure systems. We have firewalls of the company. The data is secure. But when we are going from office to home, we are carrying either the office laptop or some employee may be working from their own laptops, which are their personal laptops, and doing the official and secret work. That should not be done, because technically, ideally, it is said that the laptop in which you are doing the sensitive work, for example, the financial work, even your personal banking account work, should not be used for social media surfing, should not be used for other activities, because you go to different sites and you never will come to know that which site is carrying which kind of malware. When employees are using their sensitive information on their personal laptop at home, the malware may be installed on their personal laptop, and that may create problems for the office work. And then the network. What kind of network we are using at home? We may be using a Wi-Fi. This Wi-Fi may not be secure. Most of the time, we don't switch off our Wi-Fi. We just keep it on always. Ideally, when you are not using Wi-Fi, it should be switched off. Like you are going for holiday for 15 days. Why your Wi-Fi should remain on? It should be off. Also, while making it off, you will come to know, and you should always change the password quite frequently of your Wi-Fi, because somebody may be tapping into your Wi-Fi, and through your Wi-Fi link, they may be tapping your phone, they may be tapping your laptop, or whatever we are typing on our laptop or on phone, going to your Wi-Fi, and from Wi-Fi it is going to internet work. So that may be the weakest link. The systems are not updated. Most of the time, we see that your antiviruses and your other defensive mechanisms which are updated. Office laptop and office desktop may be updated. While you are working at home, they may not be updated. So we should always keep our systems updated. Antivirus and anti-spyware should always be updated. Commonly used passwords are also a risk. Everybody knows my name, my surname, my office, my badge, my date of birth also. These are the commonly known parameters of an individual, all very readily available on the internet. You search any of the directory, you will find name, address, and things like that. If my password is based on these common characters, it can be cracked easily. So your password should ideally be 8 to 10 string character long. It should have uppercase, it should have lowercase, it should have special characters, things like that. These are the common safety tips. And we should always use the virtual private network if we are doing a sensitive official work. In that way, what will happen is our sensitive data is protected from outside attack. It is within that virtual private network that we are sharing the office work, even if we are at home. So that virtual private network should always be preferred especially if we are doing the sensitive official work. Open source applications which we download. Normally what happens is this thing is free, that application is free, this thing is free, we always download on our laptop. Open source applications may not be secure. They may be useful. I'm not denying their usability. They may be useful, but they not be very secure. So open source VPN and open source applications are also a risk. So these are the basic things, and that is what I need to say at this moment.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. In today's session, we also have Mr. Augustus Zakaria. He is an extremely popular HR leader, having worked in IBM for about 20 years now. And he has seen the length and breadth of the changes which are happening in the organization. So welcome, Augustus. I specifically, requested Augustus to come today and share some of the best strategy that IBM as a company is doing in terms of, the safety of employees at workplace. So Augustus, would you want to share some information with us, please?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Jaya, for having me here. Truly delighted to be with this very distinguished panel. Yeah, some of the best practices. Firstly, I think we never even anticipated, we were never prepared for a scenario like this, but I suppose we adapted very quickly to what was happening. And IBM, we were one of the first to adopt the POSH program and be compliant with it, I think, way back in the early 2000s. as well as working with the government, in terms of how to strengthen it and, also supporting the industry. First thing we did was put it out there as a company policy and say that, look, this is a policy that everybody has to follow, okay? And that policy was followed through by awareness, as well as a mandatory training. Everybody will have to go a mandatory training in terms of what constitutes sexual harassment and also what is acceptable behavior, all right? So therefore, you are sensitizing your workforce, okay? Then comes a zero tolerance posture for any violations, okay? Depending on the severity of the violation, okay? So some of it may be a rap on the knuckles, some of it might go for a severe warning, and some could even go extreme to termination, depending on what it is. And then whenever a complaint is made, we tell people within the business or HR, drop what you're doing and go and focus on that complaint. It's very, very important, okay? And alongside that is what we call the EAP program, Employee Assistance Program, so that whatever trauma the victims are going through, is to some extent at least alleviated. And immediately we would also bring in certain changes to the working structure. Like, for example, the harasser could be moved to a different building or a different business unit until the investigation is complete. And once the report is out, the disciplinary action is executed very, very quickly. And the consequences of it are very clearly known to those people who are around, but confidentiality is clearly maintained. Then comes the current situation, right? What about POSH at home when people are working at home? You very clearly did read out the POSH Act, which says that home is also a place of work. And therefore, in my experience in the last few months, we've not seen an uptick in the number of cases. But, as a corollary to sexual harassment is domestic violence. Okay, so what has happened now is that as you are in a lockdown or, in the current situation that we are in, with multi-generational people, right? You have a grandparents, you have parents, you have children in the same household. And what is a family without arguments? It kind of strengthens the unity, but also sometimes tolerance limits are stretched, okay? And therefore, some other issues result in it, okay? There are domestic violence issues and things like that. And what we are seeing is a different type of sexual harassment complaints, which are more legacy issues. People are bringing a lot of past issues now, okay? So that is a very short spike that I'm seeing, but that's the only trend that I can see. And then finally, what we have also looked at here is sensitizing our people and making them accept that, look, you've got to be sensitive to working like this, okay? And we got everybody to take a work from home pledge, okay? And the work from home pledge, I'm not sure if I'm able to share okay, only presenters can share the screen. So I can't share. So the work from home pledge, every IBMer takes, and basically what they say in this pledge is that I will be sensitive to people's time. I will be sensitive to how people look, in the sense that I'm not going to go and ask someone to come on video, okay? There could be, I am not camera ready moments, okay? So like that, there are about 8 or 9 points in this pledge that people do take. And last but not least is that every complaint is very urgently looked into by a internal complaints committee, and immediately they would go, some senior leader will go and reassure that person and say, thank you so much for bringing up this complaint. Hang on there while we are looking into the investigation. But until then, please let me know what help you require. Okay. And then we also make sure that the person has one single point of contact during this period of trauma that they may be going through. So thanks so much for having me here. That's about what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Augustus. I think that was very, very good. The work from home pledge made a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you for sharing that, Augustus. So audience, I may take another 5 minutes extra. So I just wanted to invite Mr. Vaidyanathan today. Vaidyanathan has been in the top management of companies for about close to 3 decades now. And I thought from the management perspective, he can share something on what should the managements ideally look at, especially during times like this for safety of employees. So Vaidyanathan, if you can just come online and share a few minutes with us.
Thank you so much, Jaya, for inviting me here today, and be glad to be part of this conversation. Let me, paint a different picture. Not that I want to be radical out here. See, we've been speaking about diversity, we've been speaking about sensitivity, etc. But it's a different thing in the corporate world. I'm just going to involve a mix of all the conversations that have happened. People have spoken about various avenues like cyber cell, or it could be councils, committees, etc. But the bottom line to all of this, there is a very big difference between hearing and listening. The typical words that come to our mind when you say hear, you might hear whether you want to or you don't want to. You listen only when you want to. That's the first thing. And the very nomenclature of the various organizations that we have, whatever it might be called, tend to signify that sort of a meaning, firstly. Secondly, it's very important what sort of an autonomy the particular organization has, whether it be in the corporate world. For example, Mr. Augustus was talking about the IGM initiative, etc. It is true in every corporate, but unless it has reached a point in time where people have faith, people feel that they can reach out to somebody who's going to be have complete independence of whether the corporate sector or whether it could be the government sector, or it could be, there has to be that element of faith. There can be an element of trust, but people might just hear it through, but how are they actually going to act upon it? Are they going to actually take some concrete action, and will they do it quickly? Will that end in some concrete result and be fair to everybody? Are questions which are, quite difficult to answer in such a short meeting.
Sure.
And there are incorporations you can do to various acts, whether it could be, let me give you a typical example. We've spoken about initiatives, etc. We have a very big initiative in every corporate sector, especially bigger corporates. You have the corporate social responsibility. Nobody has asked any corporate what do they do with the money. If you were to incorporate some of these elements in that particular budget, you might see a lot of significance. You don't have to, go to anybody else. There's no point in conducting a health camp or an eye camp, or just because you have to spend that money and show to the government that you have to spend the money. You could, spend it on something like what Mr. Gangawat said. It made a lot of sense. If you were to really protect your corporate identity, you establish security protocols, you establish virtual networks. That is what governments are looking for right now. That is what corporates are looking for right now. So those are things which I believe need a lot of deliberation, and I think it's reached a point wherein one has to stop deliberating and doing something about it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Vaidyanathan. That made a lot of sense. So Aparna, I had another request from you. So if you could share, so since you've been working up on the policy front, coming to sexual harassment at workplace as well, do you see any kind of changes coming in the Act in the near future, which people can, which you think is important, will change the way things work in workplaces?
Actually, whether the changes are coming or not is one doesn't know at this stage, because I don't think there's anything in the pipeline.
Okay.
But the demand from the complainant side has always been that the Ms. Sharma talked about it briefly, but the complaint time, 3 months, is extremely low. And then post the Me Too movement, if you look at, a lot of people came with a lot of complaints. At that time, many of them were time barred, because they couldn't really approach any complaints committee at that point in time. So there was something about why can't these complaints also be made on par with the regular limitation law that we have in the country? That's one thing. The second thing is about I admired a senior corporate came and talked about how they had taken it in their own company seriously but that's an exception. That's not really the norm. Management should take sexual harassment seriously, and management should take it and treat it no different from any other misconduct. You know, the reason because we treat sexual harassment as some kind of these taboo and stigmatic subject, which is why the complaints become of this kind of a thing. No, people don't talk about it. There is no encouragement. The general environment in a company is not where one can actually come and openly address these issues. So this needs to be changed. But on the legislation front and on the policy front, the way it can be done is if management starts taking complaints a little more seriously. For example, if you have a complaints committee where the chair of the complaints committee is so junior in the organization, you know, the committee, nobody takes the complaints committee seriously. So these are some of the things that that needs to be brought in. So the act definitely needs to teeth, and our experiences should be put together to have a better way in which it can be implemented. At the same time, it should have a space for all parties to participate in equal manner, and that is not available today at all. You know, depending on who's making the complaint, it is always one-sided, and that has to go away. That has to be dealt with more. How to say? You know, that's exactly any other conduct.
Aparna, can you come again, because your audio was not clear?
Okay, I'll just let me see if I can put my earphones and see if that's any better. I'll try. Sometimes it happens.
Sure.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sometimes it happens with my machine. No, what I was saying was, management should treat sexual harassment complaints like the way they would treat any other misconduct. For example, if there is pilferage in your organization, if there is data theft in your organization, how do you deal with it? Treat sexual harassment in the same way. I think when we start doing that, the whole platform that is given to sexual harassment takes a different dimension. And then the manner in which everyone treats sexual harassment will change. And that is something that is really required now.
Okay.
I just hope I covered some of it just now.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much. So, thank you, Gangava sir. Thank you, Augustus. Thank you, Vaidyanathan, and thank you, Aparna. I can't thank you guys enough because it was really an eye-opener in many ways. So finally, I think a couple of, even from the Metis side, there are a couple of things that which we would want to, share it with the audience today. The roles of the stakeholders in the organization to some extent are changing now because of the situation. So I think we will look at it from three perspectives. One is the internal committees. I think I think you must understand the fact that employees are isolated today in your workplace, okay, because they're all working from home. So it's very important that you clearly communicate as much as possible to build trust amongst them. And Mr. Gangawar and Mrs. Rekha Sharma also spoke about how important it is. And of course, Aparna had spoke about the advocacy, which is very, very important in your organization. So please be in touch with your employees, communicate as much as possible with them. And one thing what I really understood, through this session is that I think the IC members in the organization, guys, when you're doing your quarterly meetings, please ensure that one skill building session is done on, understanding the cyber security and IT laws itself. I think that's very important because the way Gangawar sir has spoken about the importance of knowing the intricacies of cyber crimes, I think you guys, you do anyway 4 quarterly sessions, and of course a lot of my customers are also there on the call today. I think we will have one session specifically on understanding the cyber security, and of course I will try to get the material from Gangawar sir and see if I can share it with the companies, and why not, right? And of course IC members should also see if you can share e-posters with your employees as much as possible, communicating to them on the responsible usage of resources during the lockdown. Your awareness session material should be built now around work from home. It's very important. because as I said, a lot of complaints are coming to us where women are saying, for that matter, I didn't know. Since I was at home, I never thought that this is a workplace. Very common. I think the last 16, 17 cases which have come to us, most of them I would say that have come from the space where people didn't know that what they're going through is a workplace, right? So please, guys, build awareness session, build material to communicate this with your team. And of course, as Aparna was also talking about investigation. So whenever in case there is a complaint, you're doing investigations, you're doing online, take permission from everyone while recording and ensure that that is authenticated well. It's very important. And one thing that Mr. Gangaval was also telling was the need to make your redressal process very simple and easily accessible for people, right? So he was talking about it from the general perspective, but even you guys from your own organization, right? Make your helplines very friendly and, which is easily accessible by employees. I have seen a lot of IC, IDs given for IC committees, but when you write a mail, nobody checks it, right? So please keep those helpline numbers handy for employees to use, especially in times like this, right? So that's for ICs. Now coming to the HR role, I think it's important that you re-establish with all your employees that they are subject to the same rules of prevention of sexual harassment as they are in the virtual world as it was in the real world. There is no difference. It's the same, okay? That you need to re-establish because people really don't know. So what is happening right now is our policy has incorporated the definition of work from home as a part of workplace, but it's not very specifically given. Though it means it includes, but nowhere it's specifically given. So if you want to make changes in the policy and ensure you want to add a specific clause on sexual workplace work from home itself, please go ahead and do it, right? And I think one more important thing is have a code of conduct built around work from home. I think very beautifully Augustus said, the work from home pledge that people take. Those are small steps that they have taken. But what you guys can do is come out with a code of conduct built around the work from home and share it with your employees, which could include a lot of things that Gangavar sir has shared as well. Ensure everyone who is a part of the organization, be it new employees or existing one, I think they need to go through a proper awareness on sexual harassment at workplace, either through ebooks or e-learning modules or, virtual sessions, induction programs, whatever, but ensure that 100% of your employees are aware of, sexual harassment at workplace. And I can't stress enough on what Aparna said about having very matured IC team. That is something that I have also seen. The reason why people trivialize matters is that IC members are not serious enough. We have seen very junior IC members whom people don't take it very seriously. The moment you project them as IC members, employees are not taking them seriously. So they don't have the trust that their issues can be handled, right? So it's important that you have most matured people of the organization being a part of the IC members. And I think it's very important that you have a good knowledge management system as far as your POSH is concerned with IC members, so that every 3 years when there is a change, the knowledge that you have gained through your investigation should not go waste. It should be documented somewhere which can be shared. So that's very critical. Yeah, so with that, I end the session today. And guys, whatever questions you've had, so please, you can send it to me over the mail and I will ensure that all your questions will be answered. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jaya, can I come in just as the last minute?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. You said so many things beautifully. I have noted it down also, and they are perfectly all right. They are wonderful. Just a last suggestion.
Sure.
During the COVID times, we have started in the police, and also sometime we were doing it. Now we are doing it regularly. Is that we are asking the employee daily at morning around 10 o'clock, how are you feeling? That's very important to ask. I mean, in the organization, if the HR manager or whosoever is deputed can ask his team, how is the Josh? How is the Josh? Are you feeling okay? I think 50% of the problem will be either solved or the misunderstanding will go away. And mind you, we have all discussed the problems which come to our surface. which come to us, which are registered, which are inquired, which are dealt with. What about the problems which are not come to our knowledge, which are silent sufferer in the organization? There may be ladies who may not come to report because loss of reputation, because loss of their own job, because they think management will not take care of their problems, because nothing will happen to the accused because he is very powerful, and because he's senior, so many things. So what I'm saying is that there may be a condition in which their willingness of reporting may not be there. If a senior officer who has the trust in the organization, I'm not saying the topmost officer, but at least the next junior or at least in the top bracket, can just pick up a phone and ask, how is the George? Is everything all right? Without any purpose, without any work, whether timelines have been met or not, whether job has been done or not. Just ask, how is the George? We have been doing in the police, and mind you, 24/7, we are on the street serving the people, and we are taking care of the COVID also. We are maintaining social distancing also. We are doing everything to make people safe just by the motivation. So what I will like to give this tip to you, through you, to all the organizations, that just pick up a phone, call your employee, how is the George, in the morning every day. That should be the routine. Attendance is taken, biometrics is taken, your systems is taken, but nobody asks you, how are you feeling?
Yeah, that's right.
That is important. So I think I wanted to say this in the last, and I hope I convey my message. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. That made a difference. Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.